Dr. S.N. Datta, Assistant Professor, College of Fisheries, Guru Angad Dev Veterinary and Animal Sciences University. On behalf of College of Fisheries, Guru Angad Dev Veterinary and Animal Sciences University, Ludhiana, I heartily welcome Dr. E. Vivekanandan Sir, Emeritus Scientist and Consultant, ICR Central Marine Fisheries Research Institute, CMFRI, Cochin, Kerala, on this webinar on impact of climate change on aquatic ecosystem, organized by IDP Cell and College of Fisheries, Guru Angad Dev Veterinary and Animal Sciences University. In spite of your busy schedule, sir, you have accepted our invitation. For that, I am very much thankful to you. And before starting the actual presentation, I want to introduce sir with all of our faculty members and students. Dr. Vivekanandan is one of the pioneers in the field of fish stock assessment, population dynamics, climate change, ecosystem modeling, and evaluation. With over 4 decades of professional expertise, Dr. Vivekanandan has been closely associated with various prestigious international and national organizations, including FAO, WWF, BOBP, and Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, Government of India. He has made major contribution in developing Indian marine fisheries sector policies in special reference to global climate change. Dr. Vivekanandan was also worked as emeritus scientist at ICR CMFRI. At present, he is consultant of ICR CMFRI, Cochin and Madras Research Center, Chennai. Apart from his administrative assignments, he also guided several postgraduate students and published more than 300 research papers in different journals of national and international reputes. Dr. Vivekanandan is involved in finalizing various schemes and policies for the sustainable development of marine fisheries in the country. With this, once again, I welcome you, sir, and request you to kindly present your lecture. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really honored to get the invitation from the College of Fisheries, Veterinary and Animal Sciences University, Ludhiana. I'm particularly thankful for this opportunity that is given to me to the faculty of FRM, and I'm really glad that I have an opportunity to share some of my research findings on climate change. I should confess in the beginning that I'm more a marine person. So most of my research activities were on marine fisheries side and also marine ecosystem side. But for this presentation, I have, to a large extent, what I'm going to present will cover the freshwater ecosystem as well. So this is, and also I thank you for the very nice introduction which you made
Thank
about
you,
me.
sir.
I think you have collected a lot of information about me.
No, no,
Thank
no,
you.
no. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
It's
Thank
very
you.
little, sir. Only just a few of you.
Okay. Thank you. I also welcome all the students, and I hope this 1 hour presentation will be very useful to them for their regular curriculum as well as for improving their general knowledge on climate change and the ecosystems, aquatic ecosystems. Thank you very much. So with
Thank
this,
you, sir.
shall I start my
Yeah.
presentation?
Please, sir. Please.
I'm not getting the, should I go to the share screen?
Share screen, green button, sir. At the bottom, you can see
Yeah,
it's coming only. Yeah, it is there. Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
you can see now, I think.
Yeah. It's
Okay,
visible, sir.
okay. So my presentation will be on the impact of climate change on aquatic ecosystems. Uh, I will, nowadays the climate change research is more on adaptation and the impact. We very well know that there is impact, but the emphasis is now given on adaptation to climate change. So I will also cover in the later part of my presentation on the potential adaptation options for reducing the impact of climate change on the aquatic ecosystems. First of all, to know what exactly is climate change, we have to know that it is a global phenomenon, but it has very great variation at the local levels. Though the climate change itself is a global phenomenon, the impact varies between one location to the other location, even between two nearby areas. And what is climate change? There are a lot of definitions for climate change. I try to give a simple version. It's a climate transformation characterized by changes in the usual climate of the planet. So we have the usual climate, the seasons, and the other environmental factors such as temperature, the rainfall, precipitation, as well as the wind. Uh, this transformation, when it happens, and particularly when it happens because of human activities, we call it now as climate change. In fact, in the earlier years, before several millennia, there were natural climate change without human activity. Even before the advent of human beings, there were climate change events. But now what we are talking about in the present climate change is that the climate transformation, which is caused by human activities. That's what we are mainly now calling as climate change. But at the same time, there could be a natural event which is related to climate change even now. But what we are mainly talking nowadays is mainly the human-induced climate change events. That's what and that's what we are going to talk about it in today's lecture as well. So the Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change, which is IPCC, which is the global body to monitor climate change, it considers a minimum of 30 years of changing trend in climatic parameters as climate change. For example, you will see annual fluctuation in, for example, of temperature. Last year it might have been higher, but this year it may be less. Next year it may be different. So these are actually annual flexibilities when we talk about these annual events. So they are mostly we call what you call as the weather. But what we call as a climate is a long-term event. And what we are talking about climate change is a minimum of 30 years of changing trend. Either the temperature has to increase gradually over a 30-year period, minimum of 30-year period, or the rainfall pattern has to follow a definite change during a 30-year period. 30-year period is not written on stone. It can be different, but to have a benchmark, the IPCC has stated 30 years as the minimum period for diagnosing any changing trend in the climatic parameters. It could be climate parameter, could be temperature, could be rainfall, could be the wind, and could be in ocean, could be the salinity, the sea level rise, etc. And then the climate change has a great impact on, or I would say it has a great negative effect on the sustainability of ecosystems, on the food security, agricultural food security, the livestock, food security from livestock, food security from fisheries. and and consequently, it has very great bearing on the stability of global economy. This is a major problem, and it is suspected that by the end of this century, there is going to be a very great problem for for the human being as well. So the graph below gives you the trend, the long-term trend, climate trend. This is in terms of temperature, which is given in the red color, the long-term trend for about 40 years. So it has a consistent increasing trend. The violet color, the blue color is the short-term natural variability, maybe short-term of about 5 years. So there is a decrease and then increase, there is a decrease and then increase. So these are short-term climatic events. Sometimes could be annual variability also. But when you say climate change, you see the trend of continuous increasing temperature for about 40 years or so. So this is what we call as climate change. Then what causes climate change? That is what causes what we are talking now is the human-induced climate change. The greenhouse gases, the emission of greenhouse gases causes the climate change. There are more than 20 types of major greenhouse gases. There are, of course, many more, but there are about more than 20 types of major greenhouse gases. So among these 20 types, the four major ones in terms of volume, as well as in terms of global warming potential, what is called GWP, the global warming potential as well as the absolute volume in the atmosphere are number one is carbon dioxide. By far, it has the maximum volume in the atmosphere, and then methane, nitrous oxide, and then carbon monoxide. So if you take carbon dioxide, by far it is the most voluminous gas in the atmosphere. But if you take methane, it is not volume, it's not as much as carbon dioxide, but the global warming potential of methane is about 20 times more than that of carbon dioxide. Per 1 unit of methane, it is 20 times more effect it has got on warming potential. Similarly, if you take nitrous oxide, it is much more. It is something like 200 times that of carbon dioxide. But what we find is that in terms of volume, carbon dioxide is a gas which has the maximum volume. And because of that, this is considered to be the major cause for global warming or climate change. Global warming is one aspect of climate change. So there are several other aspects of climate change. So global warming is warming of the globe. We have several other things which we will see later. Several other things as components of climate change. Now, the greenhouse gas emission is increasing in the atmosphere. That is the main cause for climate change. And what has been estimated is that the carbon dioxide, I have given the example of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide emission in the atmosphere has increased from 275 parts per million in the year 1750 to nearly 400 parts per million in the year 2017. So in a period of about 220 years or so, the carbon dioxide emission has increased by about 125 parts per million. So we have taken the year 1750 as the cutoff year, mainly because this is from this year onwards, it is supposed that the industrial revolution started globally. So from that year onward, there is a benchmark here that is being considered. And if the emission continues at the present rate, then it will reach 450 parts per million by 2030. And then it will, suppose it reaches 550 parts per million, which is suspected that it will reach by 2070 or so if the emission continues at the present rate. The concentration of carbon dioxide may be irreversible. We may not be able to bring back to the original level of even 300 or 350 parts per million. And this concentration is a threshold for several life processes, because carbon dioxide concentration increases the temperature. It has got several other consequent effects, which will be very risky, and many vulnerable species will be at the threshold of very sensitive organisms will be at the threshold of their life processes. And nowadays, we also see the climate events like the floods, the droughts, the cyclones, the increased temperature, etc., which is and in some areas the temperature has reduced during winter seasons. So this we are seeing regularly in the newspapers. I think this is climate change is one topic which is being talked about in the media almost on a day-to-day basis. Even yesterday, the World Health Organization, the chief of World Health Organization has talked much about the climate change, and he has stated that it is going to have alarming proportion for the survival of the human beings in another 70 or 80 years. Who causes the GHG emission is that one is the industries. The first thing is the burning of fossil fuel, like the diesel, petrol, etc., which is maybe due by the automobiles, by the industries, and also by the coal, burning of coal, which is used for thermal power generation. So these are the burning of this fossil fuel and coal are some of the major reasons. And even agriculture produces greenhouse gas like the methane, because the water stagnates. And from the stagnant water, particularly from paddy cultivation, there is methane emission, and even livestock produces a lot of methane, because India has large areas under agriculture, under paddy cultivation, and also they have very large number of cattle heads, maybe one of the largest in the world. So the methane production is also supposed to be very high for India. But per capita GHG production in India is not comparable. It is very less when compared to advanced nations like US. So GHG produced by one person, one per capita, is very low compared to those produced in the advanced developed industrial nations, I would say, highly developed industrial nations. Now, going to the type of aquatic ecosystem, we have many types of aquatic ecosystems. I have just given a few number of them. In the freshwater side, we have the ponds and lakes, we have the streams and the rivers, and then the wetlands. We have very large area covered under the wetlands. We have the backwaters and the estuaries. We have intertidal zones, the salt marshes, the rocks in the, it can be in the intertidal zone, or it can be in the freshwater system, it can be in the coastal areas or in the oceans. And then we have the lagoons, we have the open sea. These are very important aquatic ecosystems, and India has a very large areas covered with these aquatic ecosystems. We have also the very critical ecosystems like the coral reefs, the mangrove forest, the seagrass meadows, which support very large number of biodiversity, a very large number of species. They also serve as breeding grounds for very large number of species, fishes, shellfish, and also many other non-commercially important species. So these are actually critical ecosystems, and unfortunately these critical habitats or critical ecosystems are very sensitive to climate change, particularly to the acidification as well as the increase in water temperature, salinity, etc. So these are the major aquatic ecosystems which are all affected, I would say, by the climate change that is happening now. Now, before going into how climate change affects the aquatic ecosystem, the stressors, we have the number of stressors on the aquatic ecosystems. It's not only climate change. You have I just tried to list down some of them. We have overfishing and also the destructive fishing in the ecosystems, whether it is marine or brackish water or the freshwater systems. We have land use changes. Many areas are getting converted. Water holding areas, the wetlands are getting converted into industrial areas or maybe several other land uses. So land use change is happening, which has a great impact, particularly on the freshwater ecosystems. And similarly, freshwater ecosystems have the problem of water pollution. You know, there are a lot of industries coming. We are supposed to treat the effluents, but it is getting without proper treatment because of, in many instances, poor implementation. The water is released as such into the freshwater systems, as well as to the coastal system also is equally under problem. And then we have the sedimentation problem. We have the tourism, throwing the litter and throwing the waste bottles, etc., in the aquatic system. It is equally true for the marine as well as the freshwater systems. And then we have the natural causes like the storms, which is natural. And now there is a thinking that the storms and cyclones are also impacted by climate change. And then we have the macro algal cover as well as the invasive species coming from from other regions, and they are invading and causing problem to the native species. So these are replacing the native species. And then we have the diseases. We have diseases in the aquatic systems. We have in the shrimp ponds, we know about that. We have diseases in the fish ponds as well. So, and not only that, but in the natural aquatic ecosystems also, there are a lot of diseases that is happening now. So climate change is one among the stressors. So we have to recognize that the climate change acts in combination with many of these stressors. It's not that climate change is acting independently on the aquatic ecosystems. It combines with several other stressors. For example, overfishing is happening, and climate change aggravates the impact of overfishing. So it joins hands with the other stressors. So what is required is that if you want to address the issue of climate change, if you want to reduce the impact of climate change, you will have to address many of these factors that are prevalent. But these factors will be different between one region to the other region, from one location to the other location. So we have to find out what is the exact issue in a particular location, in your study area, in your area where you want to address climate change, and then act accordingly. So this is the real challenge of addressing the issue related to climate change. Now, what are the major climatic impacts? What we know, what is the change we know, and what is going to happen? What could be the potential adaptation options? You see this table, I had tried to consolidate most of the things in one single table. Of course, it was a hard job, but I tried to put it in a single table. On the left-hand side, you can see 5 parameters, which are, I would say, the very critical parameters which are impacted maximum, or which have very key impact on the ecosystem, aquatic ecosystem: temperature, the rainfall pattern, sea level rise, then ocean acidification, and then the occurrence of the cyclones. So if you take one by one, if you take the temperature, in India, what we find is that in the last 120 years, from 1900 to 2018, the annual average temperature in India has increased by 0.7 degrees centigrade. So, so it has the annual average temperature has increased, but there will be a lot of variation between seasons, between locations, but this is the annual average rise in temperature. So this is what I have given as a trend here in this table. It's mostly from IPCC reports and also from World Bank report, which has come out with very strong analysis in the case of India. So if you take temperature, the prediction is that by the year 2100, that is in another 80 years, it is likely to increase by, temperature is likely to increase by 2.4 to 4.4 degrees centigrade. This why 2.4 and why 4.4, why this range is, there are different scenarios by which it is calculated. If the carbon dioxide emission or the GHG emission could be reduced in the years to come, even then the temperature rise will be 2.4 degrees centigrade. If it is not reduced and if it continues as it is now, it will be 4.4 degrees centigrade. So these are different scenarios of climate change. So the potential adaptation is that we need to have planning at the local level. I'm not going into the details of adaptation because I don't think we can cover it in a 1 hour period. But I'm coming little more in detail in the latter part of my talk. The second one is the rainfall pattern. In some locations, the rainfall is reducing, but in some locations, it is becoming heavy. But what we find is that the intensity of rainfall is increasing. That is the rainfall of, let us say, 10 centimeter in 1 hour. That is increasing. Now it is even 20 centimeters in 1 hour. So we are not able to cope up with that of intense rainfall. But the overall annual rainfall in the country as such, if you take, it has not changed much. But there are regional location-specific variations. The prediction for rainfall is that there is going to be frequent droughts as well as floods in the years to come. But what is disturbing is that already areas which are very dry, without much rain, they will become drier. And those areas which are receiving copious rainfall all these years, they will become wetter. So that is the actual problem. Dry areas will become drier, wet areas will become wetter. So that is the actual problem. So we need to have a better weather warning systems, disaster mitigation measures. It is already there in place. Many measures are there in place. Then when you compare it with 20 or 30 years ago. But to cope up with the new challenges in the years to come, the science has to come very much into the scene so that we have a better warning system and we are better prepared to cope up with droughts as well as the flash floods and things like that. Then the another important factor is the sea level rise. In the last 115 years, the sea level in India has increased by about 0.3 meters. This is average again. For some areas, it is less. In some locations, it is high. And by the year 2100, it is predicted that sea level rise will increase by 0.4 to 1 meter. So this will cause large scale damage to properties. Many low-lying areas, particularly in the coastal area, may disappear. Small islands may disappear, even along the Indian coast, in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and also along the coastal areas of India. And many island nations will have a serious problem, like the Maldives, Solomon Islands, that type of islands also will have a problem. But India also will have a problem. And those cities which are not high from mean sea level, they are going to have a lot of problem. So planning for coastal embankments, construction of coastal embankments, and strict implementation of Coastal Regulation Zone Act, that is very much required. That is, construction should be restricted, not very close to the coastal area, etc. And then we have the ocean acidification because of carbon dioxide, which dissolves, sinks in the ocean, and the carbonic acid is produced. And because of that, the pH reduces. This is actually a very serious problem for the marine ecosystem. In the last 120 years or so, the pH has reduced by 0.1 unit, and it is likely to reduce by 0.4 unit in the year 2100. So if that happens, many organisms may not be able to survive. Those organisms which have exoskeleton, they will have a lot of problems. They have, when they are at the larval stage, the skeleton, vertebrae and exoskeleton, there will be deformities because of pH reduction, acidification. And there will be a great problem for the survival of these organisms and also many other organisms. So there is no immediate adaptation options for that. Ecosystem approach is supposed to be one aspect about it. I'll come later. But overall mitigation, the difference between adaptation and mitigation is that adaptation is that we recognize climate change and we try to adapt. If there is a rain, we take an umbrella and go out. That is, we are adapting to the rain. But mitigation is reducing the climate change itself, reducing the greenhouse gas emission itself. It's a bigger challenge. And that could be one solution for the major solution for ocean, reducing ocean acidification. Then we have another problem is the cyclone. In India, in the Bay of Bengal, as well as in the Arabian Sea, we do not find any change in the number of cyclones. It's not that annually the number of cyclones has increased. It's not like that decreased. But the intensity of cyclone is increasing. That is, cyclones with more than 100 kilometers per hour velocity, that is becoming more frequent. What we received last month, this month along the southeast coast of Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh, is both the cyclones are more than 100 kilometers per hour. So this type of intense cyclone is increasing, and it's likely to increase in the years to come. And this is going to cause a large scale destruction to life as well as properties. Again, better weather warning system and disaster mitigation measures are the ones that are required to cope up with this type of climatic impacts. And how these climatic parameters, climate change parameters, have impact on the aquatic ecosystems. There is a pathway. So because of GHG accumulation in the atmosphere, as well as it gets dissolved in water as well, there are a lot of biochemical, biophysical, as well as biochemical changes that is happening. So what are the biophysical changes that gives you in the blue box in the middle? The temperature is increasing, as I showed in the earlier slide. The acidification is happening in the oceans. The current or the water mass movement, particularly in the oceans, that is changing. The direction of the current and also the speed, the velocity of the current, that is changing. And because of this change, the transport of larvae, the larval fish, shellfish, that is getting affected. The larvae are not taken to favorable destinations. It is taken to either deep water or to faraway areas. So that affects the survival of the larvae. So the adults are also affected because of that. Then there is a gradual increase in the salinity. There is a, as I said, there is a change in the rainfall pattern. The intensity of rainfall is increasing. And then for freshwater, the water availability is changing. And that is the flood, there is frequent floods, or there is long-term droughts in many areas. That changes the freshwater ecosystems. And then there is sea level rise. And then the storm frequency and the intensity particularly is increasing. And then invasive species, also it is said to be some of the invasive species, now they are able to find the climate change to their advantage. So those who are able to adapt to climate change are now proliferating, which may not be very useful species. It may be affecting the native species, but that is encroaching into the aquatic ecosystems, and then it is replacing the other native species. So these are the all these biophysical and biochemical features changes. It has impact on the aquatic ecosystems. And then in the ecosystem, there are 4 levels of changes. One is the individual animal, and then the population. Change in the population leads to change in the communities. Community is a mixture of several populations. And then change in the community leads to the changes in the ecosystems. So when you talk about the individual, because of rise in the water temperature, the metabolism increases. That is, the rate of respiration increases. The growth rate also can increase up to a certain point, and after that, it may not be possible. Similarly with the respiration. And then there is the change in the body size of some of the organisms. And then there is a change in the consumption, food consumption of the organisms. So we have got evidence for all these things at the individual fish or shellfish level. And then this change leads into change in the population. For example, the distribution of species is changing now. Then there is as the distribution is changing, and also as the individuals are changing their life history traits, the abundance of these organisms is also changing. The growth rate of the population is changing, and because of that, the production as well as the productivity is changing. And some species, some populations are able to adapt, whereas many are becoming more and more vulnerable. And then this leads to changes in the communities. There is change in the biodiversity because there is change in the distribution and abundance. Some species which are able to adapt, they are becoming dominant. And there is change in the diverse life history pattern. There is a diversity. There is change in the body size. And because the larger animals are getting gradually reduced, and the smaller animals are becoming more and more dominant because they are able to adapt to climate change. So that changes the rank of abundance of the species. Species rank number 1, what it was 30 years ago, it may be number 4 or 5 now. So that is changing the community structure. And all these 3-level change leads into change in the ecosystem level. That is, food web is changing. The structure of food web is changing. The biomass overall production is changing. And then the decomposition of the detritus, also there is a change. And because of that, nutrient cycling is also getting changed. And we also find change in the goods and services in the ecosystems. One example could be the fisheries itself. Fisheries is a goods and services provided. Fish is a goods and services, the fisheries provided by the ecosystem. And that is also changing because of the changes in the ecosystem. These are some of the important levels by which the ecosystem is affected by the climate change. So I'll just show you a few examples here. I said the distribution of organisms is changing. So you see in the global map, you see the central line is the equator line. So what we find is that organisms which are near the equator, they are moving away from the equator. Organisms which are on the northern side of the equator are moving gradually towards the northern latitudes. And those in the southern side of the equator, they are moving towards the southern latitudes. This is happening mainly because of the temperature is less in the higher latitudes. So that is the reason why these organisms are moving away. But some organisms are able to adapt to higher temperature. I'm giving you an example of oil sardine in the sea, which is the single largest fishery in India. It has annual production of 2.5 lakh tons with more than 2,000 crores of rupees as the total value. So this is a tropical fish, and this breeds and multiplies at higher temperature of 28 degrees centigrade. So this fish is able to adapt to higher temperature. So what we find here is that the four maps I'm showing, this is the abundance of oil sardine. The left-hand top box shows 1961 to 1976. The lower panel on the right side shows 1997 to 2016. So there is a difference of about, let us say, nearly 50 years. So in these 50 years, what you see in the top box is that the red color on the southwest coast, that is the where the abundance of oil sardine was there. Oil sardine is Kerala and Karnataka were supposed to be the home for the oil sardine. So the maximum abundance, which is denoted by the red color, was along Kerala and Karnataka coast. But along Maharashtra as well as Gujarat, along Maharashtra coast, it was there, but in very reduced abundance. It was not present along the east coast of India. Absolutely, it was not there. But if you see the latest figure, you can see the oil sardine has expanded maybe up to Pakistan on the Arabian Sea and up to Bangladesh on the east coast. So what has happened along the east coast, particularly along the Tamil Nadu coast, where it was not present 50 years ago, now oil sardine is the single largest fishery along the Tamil Nadu coast. The landing is more than 1 lakh ton every year. So we are able to correlate it with the temperature rise and other anomalies and say that this has happened because the fish has able to adapt to increasing temperature. So I'm showing this mainly because that it's not that all the organisms are negatively affected. There are some organisms which are also positively affected. I'm showing you two graphs here of again oil sardine and Indian mackerel. This is 1950 to 2010 on the x-axis. We find that the growth of oil sardine as well as the Indian mackerel. So what you find is that when the oil sardine was 1 year old in 1950, when it was 1 year old, its growth was 100 millimeter. But now in 2010, 60 years later, you find the growth is about 155 millimeters. So from 100, so the growth rate of both oil sardine as well as the Indian mackerel has increased. We are able to correlate it with the temperature, the availability of food, etc. So what is happening is because of increased temperature, the metabolic rate, the growth rate is also increasing in the ecosystem. Not only for the fish, but also we have calculated for the plankton as well. So everything is happening at a faster pace. The ecosystem is functioning at a faster pace because of increasing temperature and other related factors. But this cannot go on for long. So there is going to be a cap when it is going to happen, when it is going to be catastrophic for this organism, we are not very sure. Then we find phenological changes. Phenological changes is the change of life history traits which is attached to the seasons. For example, there is a particular season in which peak spawning happens. So these two fishes, which are called the threadfin breams, so this was breeding or spawning during the periods of, let us say, April and May along the southeast and southwest coast of India. But now the breeding season is gradually changing towards the cooler months, that is during February and March, when the temperature is relatively less. So there is a phenological change that is happening. So what is happening because of this, that the larvae are released, not at the regular time. It is released at 2 months earlier, and recruitment into the fishery is also changing now because of that. So fishermen are not able to find the fish which they expect at a particular period. So they have to change their gear, they have to change their fishing practices. So these are some of the things that is happening because of the change in temperature and other factors. I will just show the most vulnerable species, which is the coral reef, which is corals are extremely sensitive to rise in seawater temperature as well as acidification of oceans. The corals are very colorful organisms. They harbor thousands of species as the habitat for spawning, as a spawning habitat for feeding, etc. So corals are very beautiful. They are supposed to be the forest in the sea, and so they get the color and attraction from symbiotic zooxanthellae, which are single-celled algae, which are very colorful. And so they are having symbiotic relationship with the coral polyps. So when the seawater is warming, even if it is 1 degree above the normal seawater temperature in a particular season, or due to acidification, the zooxanthellae die. They die within the coral polyps, and because they are dead, the coral polyps expel these zooxanthellae into the water. They remove them. So once these are removed, they become pale in color. The coral polyps become pale in color, and this is called bleaching. So when they get bleached, they become pale in color. And the picture here shows the underwater photograph of a coral reef that has become pale in the Lakshadweep Sea. So once they are bleached, if the bleached corals, the corals are in bleached condition for more than a month or two, then the corals die because they don't have nutrients. The algae are not there, so they die. But if the temperature recovers to the original level, then it is possible that the corals also will recover. But now what we find is that the number of bleaching events is going to increase in the years to come. So the map shows the major coral reef locations in India: Gulf of Kutch, then Maharashtra coast, the Lakshadweep Sea, the Gulf of Mannar and Park Bay, and then Andaman Nicobar Sea. So corals will start declining by the year which is given in the table, 2040 to 2050. And then they may disappear totally if the acidification and seawater warming happens at the present level by the year 2060 or 2050. This is the same trend what many coral reefs are facing globally. We did a modeling study, and this is the result which we got. Now, moving to my topic on the adaptation, which is the last part of my presentation. What we have learned after several years of research is that for aquatic ecosystems, the main relief from climate change has to come from relief from current stressors. I showed you a graph with a lot of stressors like overfishing, like the pollution, habitat degradation, etc. So we have to get relief from those stressors, so that the ecosystems are well prepared to handle the climate change events. So that is the lesson which we have got. So the present regulations, which are, for example, the Coastal Zone Management Plan, the Marine Fishing Regulation Act, Marine Protected Area Act, the Ecosystem Approach to Management, Biodiversity Act, all these things have to be implemented in right earnest very effectively. That is one way of addressing climate change as well. So once they are there in place, and then we will be better off. It is something like a person is affected by several diseases. We have the coronavirus, but if we keep the environment clean, and if we follow the protocol, the standard operating procedures, then we will be relieved of corona. So like that, we have to take care of the other factors so that the climate change also is taken care of. Ecosystem approach to management is suggested to be a very good option, so that we concentrate on the ecosystem. What is the factors that are that are ailing the particular ecosystem. You take any one ecosystem, any one freshwater ecosystem in your area. So what are the problems that are faced? Could be climate change, but could be several other factors like pollution, water availability, etc. There are so many things. So based on that, you have to develop an approach and what is the issue and try to address each issue in that ecosystem. It could be a small ecosystem. It could be a large ecosystem as well. So you have to find out the issues in ecosystem and then act accordingly so that you also incorporate climate change into the ecosystem. So climate change could be addressed by including it as a component of ecosystem approach to management. It could be ecosystem approach to fisheries management as well. So the framework for adaptation for ecosystem approach or for any climate change adaptation is that we have to identify the vulnerability. What are the vulnerable areas? What are the vulnerable communities? What are the vulnerable species? We have to identify. Suppose you select one ecosystem, you can have in your mind in Punjab, around Ludhiana, what is the ecosystem? You have some rivers, you have some ecosystems, some ponds. So if you can identify what is the vulnerability level of that ecosystem and what are the issues that cause these vulnerabilities, then you can try to address each and every issue. And then you can, for addressing each and every issue, you have to formulate and prioritize adaptation options, how you can address each issue. For example, overfishing could be an issue in one pond. So how you will regulate overfishing by following certain options. So it could be pollution. So what are the polluting industries around? So how we are going? So like that, you have to develop adaptation option for the ecosystem. So it will be a sort of a holistic program for the ecosystem which you are targeting. And then implementation, how we are going to implement these options. You have to develop implementation plan. And then once you have started implementing, you have to monitor and evaluate the effectiveness. Simply implementation is not sufficient. Whether it is very effective, what you are suggesting. Sometimes some of your implementation or adaptation options may not be very correct. So if they are, so you have to monitor. You have to have a benchmark. You have to have an indicators, and then see what is the outcome. And then you have to review the strategy. Are you proceeding in the right line? And then you have to see whether you have to review, change the strategy, and then go follow a full circle again. So what this framework shows is that it's a very long process. So you have to take a very long journey. It's not that you have a quick fix solution to address climate change and come out with results. So it's a long-term process, and it requires resources, manpower requirements, expertise resources. It requires the infrastructure resource, as well as it requires financial resources. So these are some of the important aspects to address climate change. In my concluding slide, I would like to show that I would just like to summarize. Climate change interacts and also it intersects with other stressors and intensifies the stresses on the ecosystems. And then organisms and ecosystems respond differently to stresses. Ecosystems will, depending on the latitude where the ecosystem is located, depending on the altitude where it is located, and other features, it will react differently. So climate change is a global event, but the reaction of the ecosystem and also the adaptation measure has to come from locally. So we need to know the local scale exposure of climate change. So climate change alters the overall ecosystem functioning as well as the services, because functioning means, one example you can have is the food web change. Food web is changing, so that changes the functioning, and also the services. There are several services of ecosystems. Fisheries is one service provided by the ecosystem. And depending on the scale of impact, these services and functioning gets changed. So on a positive note, I would like to conclude that by following appropriate adaptations, it is even possible to reduce the impacts of climate change on aquatic ecosystems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It was very informative and very interesting actually. All the slides are very interesting, and I think our students and also the faculties enriched. Meanwhile, I also want to welcome some of the faculty members from other colleges also joined, and students from different colleges also joined, and our faculty members also joined. So welcome you all in this webinar. Now, I would like to start some uh, to take questions from students. Yeah. So dear students, you can ask your questions, your queries to sir.
Students, please unmute yourself and ask.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
A very good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. Please go ahead. Yeah.
So talking about riverine fisheries, so now what is the main impact of climate change? What is the major impact of the climate change on riverine fisheries?
Yeah, one thing is that as far as the rivers and of course the other freshwater systems are concerned, is that one thing is water availability. For example, for fisheries, water availability is the most important one. So if there is a change in water availability, if too much of water, there will be flooding, and the floods, the direction changes, the river course direction changes. So that has very great impact on the riverine fishery. And the riverine fishery, like the coastal or the marine fishery, it's not a well-organized sector. For example, you do not have specific landing centers, specific seasons, but it is given on contract, and then the fishermen go about and do the fishing. So organizing this activity itself is a great challenge, unlike the marine fisheries activity. So the main problem will be the water availability. Either it can be flooding, or it can be drought or reduced water availability. Because in southern part of India, what I find is that because of drought condition in many locations, water availability is reduced very much. So the rivers are no longer perennial. So we have water only few months after the monsoon, let us say only for 3 months after the monsoon. After that, there is no fishery. So these are some of the important, and I would say the freshwater fisheries is particularly riverine and pond fisheries will have greater impact than the marine and the coastal fisheries because of this problem. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Amanat. First year BFSC students.
Yeah.
Other yeah. Other question, students.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Sir, what needs to be done to preserve mangrove in the future in India?
Mangrove future in India?
Yes, sir. Necessary steps to be required to preserve the mangrove system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Steps required is that one thing is mangroves will be affected. First, we have to know the issue, how they are affected. So mangroves do need fresh water also. It's not that they need only saline water. For their growth, they need fresh water also. So you need to have good freshwater supply, number one. And number two is that because of sea level rise, as well as because of acidification, what happens is that because of sea level rise, the aerial roots of the mangroves have aerial roots. So they are getting submerged in water because of sea level rise. So a sort of a drowning of mangroves happens. So these are some of the, so what is required is that some countries, what they are doing is that slightly in the interior areas, slightly away from the usual locality of the mangroves, slightly in the upland area, they are planting mangroves now, where there is good freshwater supply. So, but the problem here is that it's not that all the species of mangroves can survive there. So only few species are able to survive, and those species which were planted there, they are surviving very well. But the question is that by this way, are we encouraging the biodiversity of mangroves? That's a question. But the solution, immediate solution, is that we can plant. We have to go for plantation, forestation of mangroves. That is an important thing. And this could be maybe slightly towards the land area where it is marshy and where there is good freshwater supply. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other question, please? Dr. Jitendra, any question in your WhatsApp group and in chat box also?
In chat box, some questions are there, but student directly they can interact if they want to wish. Later on,
Later on, we can continue also.
The Ms. Siwangi Kuswaha, if you want to interact, please interact.
Dear participants, you can unmute yourself and interact with our experts directly.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah,
So
Sivangi,
my question is, what will happen to the fish and shellfish species that depend on corals after coral depletion?
See, shellfish as well as the finfish and also several other forms like the echinoderm. There are several other forms. It harbors thousands of species. So what will happen is that they will not find suitable place for spawning, and also the right type of food. The food availability also will become a problem. So many of the species which are totally dependent on coral reefs for their survival, they may be at a very great risk. They may not be able to survive. But at the same time, we also have to consider that many species have the adaptive capacity. For example, they can move to near, suppose one aspect that is considered is that in areas where the coral reefs and the mangroves are nearby, let us say in a 2-kilometer range or something. So many of the species which are in the coral reefs, they are moving to the mangrove area and vice versa from mangrove also. So it is a sort of a good network of organisms as well as critical habitats when it is there. But some of the organisms like the coral polyp itself will disappear. So many organisms are likely, see, even now, many coral reefs are now remnant. That means that the polyps have died and it is simply a rock, a remnant rock that is existing. So that is a dying coral where you do not have any organism. So only a few which can take shelter without depending on coral for food, they can survive. Others cannot survive. But by adaptation, they can move to the nearby habitat, and some of these organisms can survive. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Is there any other doubts from the students?
Senior students, master degree students, you have already come up with this topic. Okay. Dr. Jitendra, any other questions? Yeah, in your chat box or in WhatsApp group?
I'm just checking, sir.
Yeah.
There's one question like about the coral leaf depletions or the ocean acidifications.
Yeah.
So what will be the measures to be taken are advised for the industry?
Okay. Yeah. In fact, it is sort of a challenge. It is a real challenge to bring the coral reefs back to the original form. Because it's not only climate, as I said, as I was emphasizing from the beginning, it's not only the climate change, but also pollution. Sedimentation is a maximum problem. It gets clogged. And invasive species, some forms of algae also spread over the coral reefs, and it gets choked. The corals get choked. If there is a turbidity of water because of effluents going into the sea, the domestic effluent, agricultural effluent, that also affects the corals. So nowadays, what they're trying to do is, as I said, ecosystem approach could be a good measure. You find out in a particular locality of coral, what exactly is the problem there? Is it invasive species? Is it because of pollution? What exactly is the reason? That is one thing which we can find out. And if you think that the warming of seawater is the main problem, what you can do is you can slightly go to the deeper area of the sea, because in the slightly deeper area, the temperature will be less. And you can replant corals. There are techniques available now. You can have concrete platforms, small platforms, and there is a technique that is available. Without a platform also, by having some plastic, some capsule-like things, you can grow this, plant these corals, and they grow well. In fact, they grow very well, some of these corals. So I have seen it in some places. In places like Tuticorin also, they are trying to do that. It's quite expensive, but but once they start developing, they start building the rocks. So this could be another one. But overall, I think the easiest way to do is to declare marine protected area. The MPA is a good option. So you prevent, MPA has got its own rules and regulations. You cannot do fishing there. You can have your own rules and regulation as well, depending on the issue which you are facing. You cannot have effluents discharge. So MPA, marine protected area, is a very good option. And we are supposed to have nearly 20%, at least 10% of the area declared as a marine protected area, which comes under sustainability development goals. So India also has to follow this. And that could be a better option if it is designed properly and implemented properly for coral reefs.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. I think most of the things we have cleared, and some repeated questions are there, so that already answered.
That already discussed, yeah. So I request dear faculty members, if you want any question.
If anybody, any teachers want to
Any
interact,
teachers?
maybe. Sir, actually, I have one just clarification. Last time, I think you went for the ecosystem valuation for Iran, I think, sir?
No, ecosystem valuation, I went for Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So, like for India, suppose the situations come, what do you suggest, sir? Such kind of thing.
Yeah, I think ecosystem valuation is a very important tool. I think a university like you can very well do that. Valuation of the ecosystem. You can select one particular ecosystem. It need not be ecosystem also. It can be like any particular, for example, you can take a lake, or you can take, let us say, the service provided by the lake, the fishery itself could be, you can do the valuation. It's not simply calculating the economics of fishery, but what are the other services the fishery is giving, or the fish is giving also. In fact, the German biodiversity, they funded project for India. That was about 7-8 years back. I was an advisor to them. So we selected 4 aquatic systems for ecosystem valuation. I think I will just give you the what are the things we targeted, so that you will get an idea about it.
Okay, sir.
One is the mangrove ecosystem valuation for the Gulf of I think it was for Gulf of Kutch, the mangrove ecosystem valuation. So you have to list down what are the services provided by the mangroves, like carbon sequestration, habitat for the fish, shellfish, like that. If you list down, it protects the coastline, coastal protection. If you list down, there will be 15 to 20 services provided by the mangrove. So how much of money you have to convert it in terms of money, fishery or carbon sequestration, then coastal protection. Suppose you have 1 kilometer stretch of this mangrove. Suppose in that it protects the coast. If you construct 1 kilometer of wall, sea wall, so that is the cost the mangrove is providing free of cost to you. Okay, so this is the valuation. Just one example I give. So that is one project that was given. The other project was given for Ashtamudi Lake clam fishery. You know, Kerala, there is Ashtamudi Lake, which is the only certified fishery. So after certification, how it has improved the valuation of that lake, of that fishery. That was the second project. The third project was done by Jyotis himself. He did it for the bycatch of from marine fishery. Yes. So from bycatch, you have the unintended incidental catches, like the juveniles are caught. So they do not have much value. So what is the economic loss and how to overcome this loss? So that was the third one. The fourth one project was on, you know, there is a seasonal fishing ban in the marine fishery. So because of seasonal fishing ban of 2 months, what is the, whether we have improved the economic valuation of the fishery, of the coastal fishery. 2 months no fishing, so no fish in 2 months. But in the subsequent 10 months, have we recovered this 2-month period in terms of production, in terms of value? Because of 2 months of no fishing, there was no carbon emission, fishing was not. So you have to list down all these things and calculate the value and come out with the conclusion. So these are the 4 projects that was sanctioned by the German Biodiversity Board through the Ministry of Environment and Forest. So I'm just giving an example so that you will get an idea. I would very much encourage your university to go for such a study, which can be done for a dissertation or a PhD thesis, etc.
Actually, I wrote project to UGC regarding the valuation of one Ramsar site, the Harke wetland.
Okay.
Most probably we will be working on that, sir. Economic valuation of one of the Harke wetland. It is a very important Ramsar site.
Yeah. It is, in fact, there are many studies on wetland evaluation. You might be knowing that. And you can follow that methodology. Okay. There are many that are available.
Yes, sir.
You can follow that methodology. Yeah.
Okay. So,
thank
sir.
you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
So any other question, please, from any faculty or any students? If not, then we can, I think, Dr. Jitendra, we can proceed for formal vote of thanks.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
So, okay, once again, the very good morning. First of all, I would like thanks to Almighty God for making today's function is a grand success. And I'm really thankful for having given chance to extend my vote of thanks to everyone present here on behalf of College of Fisheries, Guru Angad Dev Veterinary and Animal Science University. We express our sincere thanks to today's webinar speaker, Dr. Vivekanandan sir, who is a very emeritus scientist and advisor to the many prestigious organizations like FAO, the CMFRI, the Madras Research Center, and World Fish Center. So such having the very vast experience in the field of marine science, and sir, today for enlightening us on impact of climate change on aquatic ecosystem. We are very much thankful to you for it was very full of knowledge and interesting things. Definitely it give deep to the topic and relevance for interesting facts. So, sir, as you pointed out regarding the climate change, the sea level rises, like you told, in future some island may be submerged and maybe disappear, which was very like things point to be thing in future prevention. and also highlighted like level of different ecosystem impacts, which was very interesting, sir. And the changing pattern of biodiversity, as you showed, especially the coral reef ecosystem, which is really need to be think and for future prospects. So I'm pretty sure that the precious knowledge that uh, we have gained from you, sir, definitely it will give help our students. Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with your inspiring and motivational word. We have a lot to learn from you, sir. Once again, I would like to thank to Dr. Vivekanandan, sir, for taking our time for his busy schedule and enlightening us with the knowledge. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank
I would,
you.
I would also like thanks to our respected Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, Dr. Inderjit Singh, sir, Dean College of Fisheries, Dr. Meera D. Ansal, Madam, Dean College of Veterinary Science, Dr. S.P.S. Guman, sir, and IDP PIE, and Dr. Vineet Inder Kaur, Madam, who is a College of Fisheries IDP Coordinator, for the giving permissions and organizing this webinar. And also, I thanks to ICR IDP, National Agriculture Higher Education Project, for providing all the funds for today's function. I would also like to thank to Dr. S.N. Datta for organizing secretary of the webinar for giving platform. And finally, thanks to Amandeep Kaur for providing all the necessary arrangements from the beginnings to so far now and making this event successful. Finally, I thank to all the participants and respected dignitaries and participants from the many other colleges like Jammu Kashmir, Maharashtra, Veeraval, Udaipur. They have attended this webinar, and thank you for paying your attention and spending time with us. I would speak my end here. Thank you once again.
Yeah, I also thank the university and then the College of Fisheries, the entire faculty, and also the students particularly. Thank you very much for your patient hearing, and also for the very nice discussions which you have generated. So I think it was useful to you, and I appreciate your interest, and also thank you very much, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Just I want to show you, sir, our campus, sir, for your since you have not visited our college, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
please, sir. It's a wonderful.
We are we are fortunate, sir, that you have accepted our invitation, sir.
Yeah.
This is our campus, sir. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
This is our
This is a pond, is it?
This is the farm area, sir.
Okay. So you have in the farm, you have some fishes or what?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We have freshwater fishes mainly.
Okay, yeah.
And in the southwest part of the state, particularly that Fazilka, Mansa, and in this area actually some salt affected saline areas also there.
Yeah.
There Vinamai streams are.
Vinamai. I was about to ask you that. Yeah.
The farmers are also interested, and universities also. Regularly we are visiting, our scientists are visiting.
Okay.
So upside there is a the previous college. Now we are shifted to the new building recently this year, sir.
Okay.
This is now become an old campus here.
Okay.
It's just 500 meter distance. So this is our new college building came up, sir.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Yeah. Very good. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Nice campus. You have a lot of greenery also around you.
Sir.
Yeah, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
One we have a group photo actually, sir. Here usually we used to turn on our camera and take a screenshot. So I request to participant just turn on your camera for just 1 second so we can take a group photo.
Okay, it comes in one page, is it?
Yeah, it's in one page.
Yeah, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Participant, please turn on your camera. So please hold participant some more. Please turn on your camera. Okay, and now we are going to take it. Please just hold. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And it was very nice pleasure to have you, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you,
See you
sir.
again.
Thank
See
you. Thank you once again. Yeah. Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you all the participants for attending this event.